storm had a voice that night, a howling, grieving thing that clawed against the mountains and screamed through the valley like the spirit of something long dead. And in the small wooden cabin at the edge of the frozen forest, Lyra Hale sat by the dying fire, listening to it cry. For 3 nights the blizzard hadn't stopped. The wind battered the shutters, the snow piled high against the door, and the forest that once sang with birds now lay buried in white silence. She had sealed the cracks in the walls, fed the fire until her hands blistered, and still the cold crept in. Her grandmother's old clock had stopped hours ago. The candle beside it flickered weakly, its flame bending under the wind's breath that somehow found her through the wood. And yet, beneath the sound of the storm, there was something else, a low rumble, a thudding rhythm like claws, scratching. Lyra froze. The hairs on her neck stood on end. At first, she thought it was the branches against the door again. But this sound was too steady, too deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then a deep growl rolled through the air. Her breath hitched. The bowl she held slipped from her fingers and shattered across the floor. No one ventured this far north in winter. The village was 2 days' walk away, and every sensible soul stayed behind their hearth once the snow began to fall. No travelers, no hunters. Nothing human survived out there after dark. But what she heard now wasn't human. Something moved beyond the door. Something heavy, circling, pressing its weight into the snow. And then came another sound, closer this time, a snarl, low and sharp like teeth cutting through air. Her trembling hand reached for the iron poker from the hearth. She clutched it tight and stepped closer to the door. That was when the first one scratched. The claws raked against the wood with a sound that split her spine with fear. Another joined in. Then another. Within seconds, it was everywhere. 30 distinct scrapes, claws tearing against her home as if the night itself wanted to get in. Her breath came shallow. Her eyes darted to the small window. White frost, nothing visible beyond. Just movement, shadows, shapes, and then silence. The scratching stopped. For a long, unbearable moment, the only sound was the wind again. Lyra's chest rose and fell like she'd been running. She dared not move, dared not breathe, and then she heard it. The faintest of sounds, a voice not quite human but not entirely beast. Soft, deep, and strangely broken. "Open the door, little one." The words crawled through the cracks in the wood, more felt than heard. Her blood turned to ice. "We won't hurt you." Another voice, younger, closer. She stumbled back, shaking her head. "Go away," she choked out. "Please, just go." Laughter, rough, chilling, echoing, circled the cabin. "The Omega hides behind wood and ash," one mocked. "Do you smell it, brother?" Another murmured. Fear. Her hands tightened on the poker. Omega. That word. That curse. She had run from it for years. From the mark on her neck, from what it meant, from the bond that never formed. Omegas were meant for packs bound to alphas by blood and fate. But Lyra had none. She was an Omega who belonged to no one, the kind the wild ones hunted. The fire crackled weakly, fighting its own death. Her pulse roared in her ears. Then, another sound. Different. Slow, heavy steps, crunching through the snow, coming closer. The air changed. The others went still. She could feel it, a shift in the night itself. The growls quieted, the scratching stopped. Every beast outside seemed to lower itself in silence. Then a single knock. Boom. The door shook. Another knock. Deeper. And then a voice. Enough. It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The voice was smooth and low, commanding like a storm breaking over a field. Every sound outside fell away in obedience. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Lyra felt that voice in her bones. She could almost see him through the wood. Tall, still, powerful in a way that had nothing to do with strength and everything to do with control. "Forgive them," he said, his tone softer now. "The storm drove us further than we meant to go." She didn't answer. Couldn't. He waited. Then, almost to himself, he murmured, "You smell of ash and loneliness." Her heart stuttered, and before she could think, she whispered back, Who are you? A pause, a faint exhale. Someone who shouldn't be here. Lightning split the night, throwing light through the frost-covered windows, and in that brief flash, she saw him. A man, standing among wolves, dark hair whipped by snow, eyes glowing faintly gold in the stormlight, and then darkness returned. Lyra stepped back, breath trembling. The knocking didn't come again, only the faint sound of retreating paws, disappearing into the storm. But she knew what she'd seen. 30 wolves had come to her door that night, and one of them was not a wolf at all. One was a king, and for reasons she could not yet name, he had found her. Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Snow. When morning came, the storm still hadn't stopped, only softened. The wind's voice was hoarse now, whispering instead of roaring, and pale light seeped through the frost-webbed glass like a ghost trying to enter. Lyra woke to that cold light and the silence that followed it, a silence too deep, too sudden. The wolves were gone, at least she thought they were. Her hands were stiff as she pushed herself up from the cot. The cabin felt emptier than ever. No fire, no warmth, no heartbeat but her own. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and crept to the door. Snow had piled high against it. She had to throw her shoulder into the wood 3 times before it gave way with a crack of breaking ice. When it opened, the world outside was white death. The forest beyond her clearing lay blanketed in snow so thick it swallowed sound. Trees bowed under the weight of it, their branches skeletal and black. The air stung her face, burned her lungs. But there, in front of her door, were prints, huge, deep claw marks, circling the cabin in uneven patterns. She counted them with trembling breath. Too many. At least 30. And then she saw the others. Footprints human. They led away from the door, half buried by snow but still visible, toward the edge of the woods. And beside them, drops of crimson. Blood. Her first thought was to go back inside, lock the door, and pretend none of this had happened. But something else moved in her chest, something stubborn, foolish, and dangerously alive. Maybe it was the voice from the night before, the one that had commanded the storm itself to still. The one that had called her little one with quiet authority and something almost like sorrow. Against every instinct screaming for her to stay put, Lyra followed the tracks. The wind had lost its strength, and the snow fell gently now, soft and thick like feathers. The forest was still, too still. No birds, no movement, only her heartbeat and the crunch of her boots in the snow. The trail led her down a slope to the frozen river. The surface gleamed white and cracked like old glass, and there, at the base of an old pine, she saw him. At first, she thought he was dead. He was slumped against the tree, half buried in snow, dark hair dusted white, skin pale against the crimson staining his side. A long gash cut through his coat, and steam rose faintly from his body, the faint heat of life fighting to stay. Lyra froze a few paces away. He was beautiful in a way that made the word feel wrong, too sharp, too powerful. His features were cut from something regal, high cheekbones, strong jaw, lashes dark as ink against skin the color of stormlight. His lips were slightly parted, his breath shallow. A wolf mark burned faintly on his neck, gold and black beneath the skin, an alpha. Her chest tightened. What was an alpha doing here, alone, bleeding in the snow, and God's helper? Why did the sight of him make her heart ache instead of fear? She crouched slowly, keeping her distance.
Can you hear me?
No response. The wound didn't look like a wolf's bite. It was too clean, too precise. A blade, maybe, or a claw from something else. Lyra hesitated only a moment longer before she moved closer. You'll freeze to death out here. Still no reply. She looked back toward her cabin. It wasn't far, but dragging him there through this snow would be madness, and yet, leaving him was worse. She had spent her whole life running from wolves, hiding what she was. But that voice from the night before, "We won't hurt you. Forgive them." Could it have been him? The memory sent a shiver through her, not of fear, but of recognition. She took his arm, pulling it over her shoulder. His weight nearly crushed her, but she didn't let go. Step by step, she dragged him through the snow, teeth gritted, breath coming out in small clouds. By the time she reached the cabin again, her body screamed from exhaustion. She pushed the door open with her hip, pulled him inside, and shut the storm away. The fire had died, so she threw wood into the hearth and struck the flint until sparks came to life. Light grew in the room again, warm, golden, flickering. She stripped off his coat, careful not to look too long at the strength beneath it. His shirt was torn, his chest marked with faint scars and the edge of a tattoo near his ribs, some crest or symbol she didn't recognize. Lyra cleaned the wound with snowmelt and herbs, biting back her panic when he flinched. His eyes flickered open for the briefest second, dark gold, bright even in the dimness. They met hers, sharp and knowing. "Don't move," she whispered. His lips curved faintly, a ghost of a smile. "You shouldn't have brought me here," her heart stuttered. "You're hurt. You have no idea who I am. I don't care." He studied her then, eyes burning through her resolve. Then he leaned his head back against the wall and exhaled a shaky breath. "Then you're already in danger." Lyra frowned. "From who?" He didn't answer. She pressed a cloth to his wound again, and his hand, strong, fever-warm, closed around her wrist. "Not in threat, but in restraint. Leave me," he murmured. "If they sent you, who?" she asked again. His eyes opened fully now, and the power in them sent a chill down her spine. "The rest of the pack." She froze. "The ones from last night?" He nodded once. "They follow my command, but not all my will." Her breath caught. "Then you were the one at the door." Silence. Then a slow, deliberate nod. "Yes." The fire popped. Shadows flickered across his face. He looked at her then, not like a stranger, but like someone seeing something long lost. His gaze softened. "I told you," he said quietly. "You smelled of ash and loneliness." Her lips parted. The memory of that voice outside her door hit her like a tremor. "You—" He closed his eyes again, exhaustion claiming him. "I am Kale," he murmured. "Alpha of the North. King of Wolves?" The title hung in the air like thunder. Lyra sat frozen beside him, her pulse wild. The man lying on her floor was no ordinary alpha. He was the one legends whispered of, the beast who ruled the northern packs, who never knelt to man or moon. And now, he was bleeding in her home. Outside, the wind howled again, and through it came the distant echo of howls, 30 voices crying into the storm they were coming back for their king. Chapter 2. The wolves return. The fire burned low again. Lyra fed it one last piece of wood, then turned to look at the man, no, the Alpha King, lying on her floor. Kale's breathing had steadied, though faint traces of fever still shimmered beneath his skin. His wounds, cleaned and bound, looked less angry now, yet the air around him still hummed with something fierce and untamed. Even unconscious, he carried authority like a storm carried thunder. Outside, the blizzard had finally broken. The wind had grown quiet, leaving behind a silence so deep she could hear the faint crackle of ice melting on the roof. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt watched. Every shadow in the cabin seemed to breathe. Every creak in the wood sounded like claws testing the door again. Lyra pressed a hand against her chest, forcing herself to breathe evenly. She had lived alone for 3 winters in this cabin, far from the packlands and the village alike, and never once had she feared her solitude. But now she felt the weight of it pressing down on her, because she wasn't alone anymore. She glanced toward Kale. His hand twitched slightly, fingers curling as if grasping for something invisible. His lips moved, words too faint to hear. Dreaming, or remembering. Lyra knelt beside him, watching the sharp rise and fall of his chest. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered softly. "If they find you—" A low growl rumbled outside. She froze. It came again, closer this time, deep and resonant. Then another joined it, and another. Lyra's blood ran cold. She moved to the window, her breath fogging the frosted glass. At first she saw only snow and trees, but then as her eyes adjusted, shapes emerged from the white, massive shadows. Gliding silently between the trees, the wolves had returned. Her heart stuttered violently. She stepped back, mind racing. She couldn't fight them. She couldn't even outrun them. And Kale was in no state to move. A sudden hand caught her wrist. Lyra gasped and turned. Kale's eyes were open now, gold burning faintly in the dim light. His voice came rough, low but firm. "They're here." "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're circling. Do not speak. Do not open the door. Whatever happens, do not make a sound." Lyra swallowed. But he squeezed her wrist hard enough to make her fall silent. They can smell fear, and they will smell me. He struggled to sit up, his breath catching in pain. She tried to help him, but he shook his head. Hide me, he said through gritted teeth. Where? He glanced around the small cabin, then toward the old trapdoor in the corner leading to the cellar. There. Lyra hurried to it, pulling it open. The air that rose from below was cold and damp, thick with the scent of earth and old herbs. She helped him crawl toward it, every movement a wince of effort. When he reached the ladder, he paused, looking up at her. If they enter, say nothing. Show no fear. They may not harm an Omega, she swallowed hard. And if they do, he met her eyes and something in his gaze softened. Then I will tear the world apart to reach you. Before she could respond, he vanished into the darkness below. She shut the trapdoor and dragged the heavy table over it, just as the first knock shook the walls. Boom. The sound rattled the wood and her bones alike. Boom, Lyra flinched. The door creaked under the weight of claws scraping along its surface. Voices murmured outside, low, half-growled words in the old tongue of the wolves. She caught only fragments. Alpha scent, blood, Omega inside. Her knees trembled, then a new voice, a female one, sharp and cold, rose above the rest. I can smell him. He's here. Lyra's heart stopped. The door handle turned, slow and deliberate. She rushed forward, pressing her body against the wood. Who's there? Silence. Then, open the door, Omega. The voice was steady, controlled, too calm to belong to a wild beast. We mean you no harm. We seek our Alpha. He is injured. You have seen him, haven't you? Lyra's throat tightened. There's no one here. Lies. A low growl followed, close enough that she could feel its vibration through the door. Move aside or we break it down. Panic surged in her chest. Her eyes darted to the trapdoor. She couldn't let them find him. Please, she said softly. He's not here. There was a pause. Then unexpectedly a different voice spoke, male, younger. If the Alpha were here, he'd have called us by now. Perhaps he fell. The blood leads west. Another voice. Or perhaps the Omega hides him because she feels his scent burn her veins. Laughter followed, dark and cruel. Lyra's nails dug into the wood. Leave, she whispered. Please just leave. For a moment it seemed they might break the door down anyway. But then from somewhere beyond the trees a long, commanding howl cut through the air. Every sound stilled. Lyra froze. Breath caught in her throat. The wolves outside responded instantly. Howls rising in chorus echoing back into the forest. She couldn't understand what they said, but the sound rolled through her bones like thunder. Then one by one their growls faded, their shadows retreating into the snow. Within minutes silence returned. Lyra stayed frozen by the door, chest heaving, until her trembling legs gave way. She sank to the floor, hands pressed to her mouth to stifle a sob she hadn't realized was building. It was over. For now. When she finally pushed the table aside and opened the trapdoor, Kale was sitting below in the shadows, his golden eyes glinting faintly. They're gone, she said weakly. He climbed up slowly, wincing at the pain in his side. You did well, she gave a shaky laugh. I lied to an entire pack of wolves. I'm not sure that counts as well. Kale's lips curved faintly, but his gaze was heavy. They won't stay gone long. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell the faint wild scent of pine and blood and snow that clung to his skin. They will come again, he murmured. And when they do, you must decide. Decide what? She whispered. Whether to hand me over or stand beside me. Lyra met his gaze, heart pounding. Why me? Why my door? Kale's eyes softened, almost human now. Because fate doesn't knock, it scratches. Her breath caught. Outside, somewhere far off, a wolf howled again, one voice solitary, echoing through the dying storm, and though Lyra didn't know why, her pulse answered it. Chapter 3. Blood and Secrets. The storm had finally broken for good. 3 days passed since the wolves last came scratching at her door. The world outside the cabin lay quiet now, wrapped in blankets of snow that glittered faintly under a dull silver sky. But inside, silence had taken on a different kind of weight, Kyle hadn't left the cabin since that night. His wounds had begun to close, the fever ebbing slowly, yet the exhaustion never quite left his face. Even weakened, he was a presence that filled every corner, commanding without trying, dangerous without speaking. Lyra tried to ignore the way her pulse reacted whenever he looked at her for too long. She busied herself with small things, grinding herbs, warming broth, tending the fire, anything that let her forget that a king of wolves sat in her home, watching her with eyes that saw too much. "Your hand is shaking," Kale said quietly one morning, breaking the silence. Lyra blinked, realizing she had spilled a few drops of water on the floor. "It's cold," he tilted his head. "It's fear," she frowned. "I've had worse company than you." A faint smirk touched his lips. "Doubtful?" She almost smiled back before she caught herself. "Don't tease me, Your Majesty." That made his expression shift, something between amusement and regret. "Do not call me that here. Names have power, so do titles. Then what should I call you?" He hesitated. "Kale." The name alone sent a strange warmth through her chest. She nodded slowly. "Kyle, then." He studied her for a moment longer, then leaned back against the wall. "You're not from any nearby pack. I can tell by your scent." Her throat tightened. "I don't belong to one." His gaze sharpened. "Impossible. Omegas cannot survive without an alpha bond. Not for long. I've managed." "How?" Lyra turned away, busying herself with the kettle, though the water had already boiled. "By hiding. By pretending I'm nothing at all." Silence. Then his voice, low and curious. "From whom are you hiding?" She set the kettle down a little too hard. "Everyone." When she finally looked at him, his eyes had softened, no longer sharp gold but warm amber. "You were hunted once. More than once." He said nothing, but the tension in the air thickened. She could feel his anger like a slow burn, not at her, but at the memory of whoever had driven her into the woods. "Wolves," she whispered bitterly. "They called me broken. Said an Omega without a mate was a curse. So I ran." Kale's jaw flexed. "Not broken," he said. "Unclaimed, yes, but never broken." She laughed softly. "That's easy to say when you rule them." His eyes lifted to hers. "You think ruling them makes me free?" Lyra stilled. There was a kind of sadness in his tone she hadn't expected. Heavy, ancient, and quiet. He looked toward the window where snow drifted down like falling ash. "Power binds as much as weakness does. The crown is just another chain." For a moment, the world held its breath between them. Then softly she asked, "Why were they chasing you?" Kale's gaze darkened. "Because one of them wants the throne." She blinked. "A traitor?" He gave a slow nod. "My beta. Once loyal, now blinded by greed. He means to unite the southern packs under his rule. To do that, he must kill me first." Lyra's heart sank. "That's why you were bleeding." His hand brushed against his side unconsciously. He came close. "And your pack?" "They follow strength," Kale said bitterly. "When he declared me fallen, they obeyed. Only a few still hear my call." Lyra swallowed. "The night they came to my door, were they searching for you?" "Yes. And if they'd found you here?" He looked at her then, his eyes unreadable. "You'd likely be dead." The words hit her like a chill. Yet beneath them she sensed something else, fear. Not for himself, but for her. She moved closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you come to me, Kale?" He met her gaze, and for a moment, the Alpha King looked like a man stripped bare of armor. "I don't know," he said softly. "But when I saw your light through the storm, I felt called." Lyra's breath trembled. Outside, the wind moaned low through the trees, a sound that almost resembled a howl. "Called," she echoed. "By what?" "By something older than fate." His eyes lingered on her mouth, then dropped away quickly. "You should keep your distance from me." "Why?" "Because my blood calls to yours, and if the bond awakens, you'll be marked as mine." Her heart skipped. "Is that what you want?" His expression turned pained. "It's what I can't afford." They stood there in silence, the air thick between them, every heartbeat loud in her ears. Then Kale turned away sharply, his voice low again. "You saved my life. That already puts you in danger. My beta will find this place soon." Lyra's stomach twisted. "Then we should go." "Before he does," he shook his head. "You don't understand. He doesn't just want my crown. He wants you." She froze. "Me?" Kale's jaw tightened. "He hunts for unclaimed Omegas. Uses them to build false bonds to control the packs. Word of your scent will spread." Lyra's hands went cold. "Then I'm already dead." Kyle stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. Not while I live. There was nothing soft in his voice now, only promise. He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing her chin, tilting her face toward his. His touch burned, sending sparks through her veins. "Do you trust me?" he murmured. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say she trusted no one. But when his eyes held hers, golden and fierce, she found the truth slipping past her lips. "Yes." Kyle's gaze flickered to her mouth again. Then he pulled away, breaking the spell. "Then do exactly as I say. Tomorrow we leave." Lyra's heart raced. "Where?" "To the mountains," he said. "To my father's ruins. It's the only place they won't dare follow." She nodded slowly. "And after that?" Kale looked at her, the faintest trace of something almost tender in his eyes. "After that," he said softly, "we see if the bond that called me to your door was truly a curse, or a salvation." The fire crackled. Outside, snow began to fall again, silent, endless, and white as bone. And though Lyra didn't know it yet, that night marked the end of her solitude forever. Chapter 4. The hunt begins. By dawn, the world was nothing but white breath and silence. Lyra stood by the window watching as the horizon bled pale gold through a curtain of snow. The forest below looked deceptively still, as though the night's horrors had been nothing but a fevered dream. Behind her, Kyle moved with careful restraint. His wound had mostly sealed, though his strength hadn't fully returned. Every movement carried both power and pain, like a beast half-caged within his own body. He'd found an old cloak among her things, one far too small for his frame. It hung over his shoulders like shadowed wings as he checked the few supplies she had. Dried meat, a water skin, 2 candles, and a bundle of herbs. "It's not enough," she said quietly. "It'll have to be," Kyle replied, tightening the strap on the small leather satchel. "We move before the wind changes. Their scouts will catch our scent by noon." Lyra hesitated. "Are we running from them, or toward something worse?" He paused, looking at her. "Both," she almost smiled. Comforting, he didn't return it. His gaze lingered on her face a little too long, as though memorizing it before stepping into danger. "Stay close to me once we leave this place. Don't stray from my side no matter what happens." She nodded. Together they stepped out into the snow. The air was knife-sharp, and the wind bit through her clothes like claws. Every crunch of her boots felt deafening in the quiet. The forest that surrounded her cabin, once her refuge now seemed vast and merciless. Kale walked ahead, his movements silent and sure. He seemed to know where to place each step, how to vanish between trees as if the woods themselves bent to his will. Lyra followed close behind, her breath visible in pale clouds. Her pulse quickened with every shift of shadow between the trees. Hours passed before she dared to speak. "You said your beta betrayed you," she murmured. "What was his name?" Kale didn't glance back. "Riven." There was venom in the word. "He was the brother I trusted most. I raised him from nothing, and still he wanted more." His tone darkened. "He wanted everything," Lyra frowned. "And he'll chase you until you're dead?" Kale's jaw flexed. "Until he's sure I am, or until he takes what he thinks is mine." She hesitated. "Meaning me?" He stopped walking. Slowly he turned, his golden eyes finding hers. "He can't have you." The words struck her like a physical thing and a promise, a warning, a confession all at once. Her pulse fluttered and she looked away. "You sound certain." "I am." When they resumed walking, the silence between them was charged, not with fear this time, but with something deeper, heavier. By midday, they reached the foothills, a long stretch of frozen ground that sloped toward the white peaks in the distance. The ruins Kale had spoken of lay hidden in those mountains, half buried in ice. They were nearly there when Lyra stopped suddenly. "Wait," Kale turned. "What is it?" She knelt in the snow, touching a mark on the ground, a deep paw print fresh and wide. Then another, and another. Her voice came out barely a whisper. "They found us." The howl that followed confirmed it. It rolled through the forest like thunder, raw, wild, and close. Then came others, echoing, multiplying, filling the mountains with sound. Kale's eyes flared gold. "Run!" Lyra didn't hesitate. The forest exploded around them. shadows darting between trees, snow flying from paws, low snarls cutting through the air. She ran as fast as she could, the breath tearing from her lungs, her boots slipping on ice. Kyle stayed behind her, his body moving like the wind itself. Every time she stumbled, his hand was there, steady, grounding. Keep going. He shouted over the storm of noise. Branches tore at her cloak. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear the wolves behind them, but she could feel them. The ground trembled under their chase. They broke through the trees and onto a frozen stream. Kyle seized her hand, pulling her forward as the ice cracked beneath their feet. The cold bit at her ankles, but she didn't dare slow. Then a shape burst from the woods ahead, a massive black wolf, eyes burning red. It lunged for them, claws slicing through air. Kale shoved her aside and turned with a snarl that was not human. His body shifted in a blur, bones cracking, muscles twisting, and in an instant where a man had stood, a great dark wolf now towered. He collided with the attacker midair. The sound of impact was brutal, a clash of teeth and fury that sent snow spraying like shattered glass. Lyra stumbled back, staring in shock. Kale's wolf form was enormous, his fur black with streaks of silver, his eyes molten gold. Every movement was lethal grace, the king of wolves unleashed. He tore into the other beast with a savage precision, forcing it down until the forest fell silent again. The enemy wolf whimpered once, then vanished into the snow, retreating with its tail between its legs. Kyle turned to her, chest heaving, eyes glowing. For a moment, neither moved. The world seemed to narrow to the space between them, to the breath that misted in the cold air and the wild thrum of something ancient rising in her veins. When he shifted back into his human form, snow clung to his skin like frost to stone. Blood streaked his chest, but it wasn't his own. Lyra rushed to him. "You're bleeding again." He shook his head. "It's not mine." Still, she reached out, touching his arm, and the moment her fingers brushed his skin, heat seared through her like lightning. Kyle froze. His eyes met hers. "Lyra," he murmured, voice rough. "You need to stop." "Your scent," he rasped, stepping back. "It's changing," she blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" He inhaled sharply, his control visibly fraying. "The bond. It's waking." Her pulse thundered in her ears. I didn't do anything. It doesn't matter. The bond chooses, not us." His voice dropped, low and fierce. "And now every wolf within 10 miles will smell it." A distant howl rose again, closer than before. Kale grabbed her hand. "We have to reach the ruins before nightfall." Lyra nodded, breath trembling. "And after that?" He looked at her, golden eyes burning with something she couldn't name. "After that, either I claim you or they will." The world went silent around them again. Snow falling softly, wind whispering through the trees, and as Kale pulled her toward the mountains, Lyra realized that her heart was no longer running from danger. It was running toward it. Chapter 5. The Choice of the Alpha King. The ruins emerged like a ghost from the snow, half buried beneath ice and time. The old fortress crouched at the base of the mountain, its stone walls cracked, its towers long fallen. But even broken, it carried an air of reverence, the kind of place where vows had been made and blood had been spilled centuries ago. Lyra stumbled as they crossed the last stretch of frozen ground. Her body was shaking from exhaustion, her breath coming in sharp clouds. But Kale didn't slow. His hand gripped hers, firm and relentless, dragging her toward the open archway that yawned like the mouth of a dead god. Inside, the air was colder than death. The faint light filtering through the broken ceiling painted the stones in shades of blue and gray. Kyle finally stopped near the remnants of an altar. He turned to her, his chest heaving, snow melting against his skin. "We'll be safe here," he said, voice rough. For a little while, Lyra sank against a wall, wrapping her cloak around her trembling body. Her heart still pounded from the run, but more than that, from the way he looked now, like something wild, barely held in human shape. "You said this place was sacred to your kind," she whispered. Kale nodded, his gaze drifting toward the altar. "It's where the first Alpha King swore his oath to protect the bond between our kind and yours." "Our kind?" "Omegas," he said softly. "The heart of the pack, the ones who could balance the beast with grace." Lyra's lips parted. "You make it sound like poetry." "It was," Kale murmured, "before greed turned it into power." He knelt before the altar, his expression shadowed. Riven will come for me here. It's where he'll think I'm weakest. And are you? Kyle looked up at her and then smiled faintly. Not while you're breathing. She felt the words deep in her bones, burning through the cold. Outside, a low growl echoed across the snow, followed by another. Dozens. The pack had found them. Lyra's breath caught. They're here. Kyle stood, his eyes flashing gold. Stay behind me. The first wolf burst through the doorway, black as midnight, red eyes gleaming. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the ruins were surrounded by snarling beasts. And then he appeared. Riven. He stepped through the archway with the easy grace of a predator who already believed he'd won. His fur was silver white, his eyes a cruel, beautiful blue. When he shifted back into human form, his smile was sharp as frost, brother. Riven said softly. You've fallen far. Kale's voice was ice. And yet I still stand. Riven's gaze slid to Lyra. The little Omega who smells of royalty. He murmured. No wonder you ran. You found her. The one the moon chose. Lyra froze. What are you talking about? Kale stepped forward, his voice low. Don't listen to him. But Riven laughed. He didn't tell you, did he? You weren't just anyone who opened a door to 30 wolves. You're the last bloodline of the first Omega Queen. The one destined to bind the Alpha King or destroy him. Lyra stared at Kale, her pulse hammering. Is it true? Kale's silence was answer enough. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because I didn't want destiny to decide what I already chose, he said fiercely. You, Riven chuckled. Then she will die for your choice. Before Lyra could react, the pack surged forward. Kyle shifted in an explosion of power, meeting them head-on. The ruins filled with chaos, snarls, claws, and the thunder of battle. Lyra backed away, pressing her hand to the altar. The air shimmered faintly beneath her touch, as though something ancient pulsed beneath the stone. The whispers of the past seemed to echo through her mind. The Omega's heart is the bond is the crown. She turned toward Kale, her chest tightening. Riven was on him now, the two alphas colliding in a storm of fur and blood. Kale fought like fury incarnate, but he was outnumbered, his strength waning. Without thinking, Lyra stepped forward. Enough. Her voice rang through the ruins, carrying power she didn't know she had. Every wolf froze. Even the wind seemed to stop. The mark on her wrist, faint in silver since birth, began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Light spread from her skin, curling through the air like strands of moonfire. Riven snarled. No. Kale turned toward her, and in his eyes she saw recognition, reverence, fear. Lyra, don't, he shouted, but it was too late. The light burst outward, engulfing the ruins. The wolves cried out, forced to their knees as the ancient power swept through them. The stone trembled, the snow outside swirling in wild spirals. Lyra fell to her knees, trembling. Make it stop. Kale shifted back, running to her, gathering her into his arms. You called the bond, he breathed. You claimed me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't mean to. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her skin. Then let it mean something. The glow dimmed, leaving silence in its wake. Around them, the pack lay still, not dead but bowed, submitting to their true king and queen. Riven staggered to his feet, fury blazing in his eyes. You'll regret this. Kyle moved faster than she could see. His claws flashed and Riven fell, his snarl fading into stillness. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind whispered through the broken ceiling, carrying flakes of snow that landed softly in Lyra's hair. Kale brushed one away, his touch almost reverent. You were never meant to be hidden away, he said quietly. You were meant to rule beside me. Lyra met his gaze. Those golden eyes that had terrified her, saved her, undone her. I didn't want a crown, she said softly. I just wanted to survive, he smiled faintly. Then survive with me. When he kissed her, the world outside the ruins fell away, leaving only the warmth of his hands, the echo of her name, and the storm breaking softly around them. Epilogue. When the storm remembered their names. The blizzard passed with the dawn. By the time the first rays of sunlight spilled across the mountains, the world had changed. The snow that had howled and clawed all night now lay soft and silent, glimmering like powdered glass. Lyra stood at the edge of the ruined fortress, her cloak trailing in the frost, her breath a thin ribbon of mist. Below her, the valley stretched endless and white, untouched, unbroken, reborn. Behind her, Kyle approached quietly. His steps were light, but she felt him before he spoke. The heat of him, the pull that hummed through her veins like a heartbeat that belonged to both of them now. "The pack has gone," he said softly. "Those who survived bowed before you before they left." Lyra turned to him. The golden light of morning caught the edges of his dark hair, softened the sharp planes of his face. "Before us," she corrected gently. His lips curved, but his eyes were still heavy with things unspoken. "I don't know what this makes us anymore," he admitted. "King and Queen, Alpha and Omega, or simply two creatures who found each other in the storm." Lyra stepped closer, her fingers brushing the edge of his cloak. "Does it matter?" He looked at her for a long time. Then he shook his head. "No." They stood there in silence, the wind whispering around them, not cruel now, but almost tender. From the ruins behind them came the soft sound of dripping water as icicles began to melt. The world was thawing, and with it the cold that had ruled their lives seemed to retreat. Lyra tilted her head up to the sky. "I used to dream of freedom," she murmured, "of being far from everything. No pack, no destiny, just peace. And now?" Kyle asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "Now I think freedom isn't about being alone. It's about being safe with someone, even when the world isn't." Kyle's hand found hers. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. "Then you'll never be unsafe again," he promised. She looked up at him, her heart both fragile and fierce. "Don't make promises you can't keep, my king." He leaned closer, his breath mingling with hers. "Then I'll make one I will keep," he whispered. "When the next storm comes, it will not find you alone." Their lips met, slow, tender, sealing the vow in the quiet morning. The bond that had awakened within her pulsed softly, glowing beneath her skin like the memory of moonlight. She could feel it, the wild magic that tied her to him, not as a chain but as something living, breathing, and ancient. When they finally pulled apart, Kale's eyes were no longer just gold. They were soft, almost human. "What will you do now?" he asked. Lyra looked out over the white horizon. "I'll rebuild the cottage," she said thoughtfully. "Maybe plant something in the spring. You'd trade a throne for a garden?" She smiled. "A throne can wait. The earth doesn't." Kyle laughed quietly, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. It was a sound that warmed even the cold air. "Then I'll follow you anywhere, Lyra of the storm." She turned to him, the faintest shimmer of mischief in her eyes. "You already have." For a long moment the world was utterly still. Only the sound of wind brushing through pine and the soft rhythm of their breaths. Then, far below, a wolf howled, not in mourning this time, but in something that sounded like reverence. Another joined it, and another, until the mountains echoed with the sound. Kyle's gaze lifted to the horizon. "They remember," he murmured. "Who?" she asked softly. "The storm," he said. "It remembers the ones who survived it." Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the dawn. "Then let it remember our names." The wind rose, carrying their scent through the trees, not as fugitives anymore, but as rulers of a realm reborn beneath the snow. And when the next storm came, as it always would, the wolves would whisper her story by the firelight. The night 30 wolves scratched at her door, and the Omega who answered it became the mate of a king.